Somewhere along the way, without even realizing it, many of us start to drift away from who we truly are. It doesn't happen all at once. Not like one day you wake up and say, I'll stop being myself. Instead, it begins quietly, almost invisibly. As children, we learn that certain parts of us are welcome, while others bring disapproval, rejection, or even punishment. Maybe you were told not to be too loud, not to cry, not to ask for too much. Maybe you were praised only when you achieved, when you behaved, when you fit into the mold others created for you. Slowly you internalize that message. To be accepted, you had to hide parts of yourself. And in silencing those parts, you began to disconnect from your own essence. That disconnection is subtle but powerful. You might not notice it at first because survival takes priority. Pleasing others becomes second nature. You shape yourself into who your parents, teachers, or society want you to be. You wear the smile even when you're hurting. You act strong even when you feel fragile. You say yes when deep inside your heart screams no. Each of these small compromises feels harmless at the time, but little by little, they build a distance between your true self and the self you show to the world. This silent disconnection becomes the foundation of your life, and by the time you're an adult, you may not even remember who you were before the world told you who you should be. You may find yourself chasing goals that don't fulfill you, staying in roles that suffocate you, or building relationships where you feel unseen. Deep down, you sense something missing, but you can't quite name it. That missing piece is you, the real you, the one you left behind long ago. And here's the truth. Your authentic self never truly disappears. It waits quietly beneath the layers of expectations, waiting for the moment you turn inward and listen. It whispers in your dissatisfaction, in your restlessness, in that quiet ache for something more. The silent disconnection may have kept you safe in the past, but it is not where you belong. What you long for is not outside of you. It has always been within. Because the first step to reconnecting is acknowledging that the distance exists. And once you see it, the journey home to yourself begins. Reconnecting with yourself begins with something that may feel almost foreign at first, listening inward. For so long, you've been tuned to the voices outside of you, the expectations of family, the pressure of society, the demands of work, the constant noise of comparison. Those external voices have been so loud that your own inner voice has been drowned out, reduced to a whisper you can barely hear. That's why the journey back to yourself requires turning down the volume on the outside world and creating space to truly notice what's happening inside you. This isn't about grand gestures or sudden revelations. It's about small, consistent acts of awareness. It might begin with noticing when your body tightens during a conversation, realizing when your heart sinks after saying yes, when you wanted to say no, or catching the heaviness that lingers after spending time in an environment that doesn't feel right. These signals are your inner self speaking, trying to guide you back to alignment. Most of the time we've been taught to ignore them, to override them with logic or duty. But when you stop to pay attention, you realize your body and emotions are telling the truth you've long suppressed. Reconnecting also means questioning the stories you've been told about who you are. Perhaps you were labeled as too sensitive, too emotional, too difficult, or maybe not enough, never smart enough, strong enough, worthy enough. Over the years, you may have mistaken those labels for your identity, but those judgments were reflections of someone else's limitations, not your essence. By pausing and listening to yourself without judgment, you begin to separate the truth of who you are from the roles you were forced to play. This inner listening doesn't happen overnight. At first you might feel uncomfortable, even restless, because silence has a way of revealing the pain you've avoided. But in that discomfort lies your doorway back to self-connection. With patience, you begin to hear not only your pain, but also your longings, your passions, and your needs. As you learn to honor those needs, you start reclaiming the parts of yourself you thought were lost forever. Because the moment you give yourself permission to listen within, you plant the first seeds of returning to the wholeness that was always yours. One of the most powerful steps in reconnecting with yourself is allowing space for your authentic emotions to rise to the surface. For much of your life, you may have learned to suppress or hide what you truly feel because it wasn't safe to express it. Maybe you were told to be strong when you needed comfort, or you were shamed for crying, or perhaps your anger was dismissed as being too much. Over time, you learned to bury your emotions, convincing yourself that it was better to stay quiet than to risk rejection or conflict. But the truth is, those emotions didn't disappear. They stayed inside, quietly shaping your choices, your relationships, and even your sense of self. Reconnecting means giving yourself permission to feel again, even when it feels scary or overwhelming. It's not about dramatizing your pain, but about letting it be acknowledged rather than silenced. When you feel sadness and let it flow through tears, you are honoring your inner truth. When you feel anger and allow yourself to express it in safe, healthy ways, you are reclaiming your voice. When you let yourself feel joy without guilt or fear, you are reconnecting with your natural state of aliveness. Each of these emotions is a piece of who you are, and denying them has only kept you further away from yourself. The process requires compassion, because often when buried emotions rise, they come with memories and wounds you thought you had forgotten. You may find yourself grieving losses you never properly mourned, or confronting the loneliness you masked with busyness. This is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign that your body and mind are ready to release what you've carried for too long. By letting yourself feel fully, you are breaking free from the numbness that kept you disconnected. With time, something shifts. Instead of being afraid of your emotions, you begin to see them as guides. They tell you what feels safe, what doesn't, what excites you and what drains you. They remind you of your needs and your boundaries. Emotions are not obstacles to overcome, they are signals pointing you back to the deepest truths within yourself. And when you allow those truths to surface, you take another step toward remembering who you've always been beneath the layers of silence. Another essential step in reconnecting with yourself is rebuilding trust in your own inner voice. For many people, losing themselves didn't happen suddenly. It was the slow result of constantly doubting, dismissing, or silencing their instincts. Maybe as a child, your feelings were minimized, so you learned not to trust them. Maybe in relationships, you were manipulated into believing your perceptions were wrong, so you questioned your own reality. Or maybe you simply got used to putting everyone else's needs above your own until you forgot how to even hear what you wanted. Over time, your inner compass grew quiet, and with it, your connection to your true self faded. Reconnecting begins with listening again, even if at first a voice within you feels faint or uncertain. It can start with something small, like noticing when your body tenses in discomfort around certain people, or when your energy lights up at the thought of a new possibility. These signals are your truth trying to communicate. When you pay attention and act on them, even in small ways, you're rebuilding the bridge back to yourself. This process takes patience because self-trust doesn't return all at once. You may second guess yourself, wonder if you're overreacting, or feel the old pull to prioritize others' approval over your own knowing. But each time you choose to honor what feels right for you, you strengthen that inner voice. Slowly it grows louder and clearer until it becomes impossible to ignore. What makes this so transformative is that your inner voice is deeply connected to your sense of authenticity. It's the part of you that knows when something aligns with your values and when it doesn't. It's the part that remembers what you've longed for, even if you buried those desires years ago. By trusting it again, you're not only reconnecting with your intuition, but also reclaiming the power to shape a life that truly reflects who you are. When you've spent years disconnected, it can feel daunting to begin listening within. But the truth is, your inner voice never left you. It was only waiting for you to come back. And when you do, you discover that the guidance you were searching for outside has always been inside. Another vital part of finding your way back to yourself is reconnecting with your emotions, the very feelings you may have buried, numbed, or dismissed over the years. Many people lose themselves because they learned early on that certain emotions were too much or not acceptable. Maybe anger was punished, so you swallowed it. Maybe sadness was ignored, so you forced yourself to smile. Maybe even joy felt unsafe, so you dimmed your light to avoid standing out. Little by little, you became disconnected from your own emotional truth. And without realizing it, you lost a piece of yourself each time you pushed those feelings away. The problem is that emotions never really disappear. They don't vanish just because we avoid them. They sink deeper into the body and the unconscious, waiting for acknowledgement. That's why you may feel heavy without knowing why, restless without explanation, or even numb when life should move you. These are signs that the self you lost is still holding on to emotions you never allowed yourself to fully feel. And then reconnecting with your emotions doesn't mean drowning in them or letting them take over your life. It means giving them space, listening to what they're trying to tell you, and allowing them to move through you instead of keeping them trapped inside. It can start with something as simple as noticing how your body reacts when you feel hurt, tightness in the chest, tears welling in your eyes, and instead of shutting it down, allowing yourself to sit with it. The truth is, emotions are messages. Anger often points to boundaries that were crossed. Sadness highlights the depth of what mattered to you. Fear signals where healing and courage are needed, and joy reminds you of what makes you come alive. When you deny these messages, you deny yourself. But when you allow them, you begin to experience life as your full, authentic self again. It takes courage to feel emotions you once buried, because doing so may stir old wounds. But every time you allow yourself to cry, to express anger in a healthy way, or to admit to yourself that you're afraid, you are reclaiming the parts of yourself that were silenced. And slowly, you begin to realize that your emotions are not your weakness, they are your truth. The final step in truly reconnecting with yourself is to create a life that reflects who you are now, not just who you were told to be. Losing yourself often happens because you've lived too long according to other people's expectations, what family wanted from you, what society deemed acceptable, what partners or friends needed you to be. Over time, this can feel like wearing a costume that never quite fits. And while it may have kept you safe or accepted, it came at the cost of your authenticity. Reconnection is about taking off that costume and choosing to live in alignment with your own truth. This doesn't mean you have to abandon your responsibilities or relationships, but it does mean you begin to make choices from a place of self-awareness instead of self-betrayal. It might look like pursuing a hobby you abandoned because it wasn't practical. It might mean setting firmer boundaries in relationships where you've been giving too much. It could mean changing careers, shifting environments, or even reevaluating the values you were taught to follow. The point is not the size of the action, it's the intention behind it. When your daily actions begin to match your inner values, even in small ways, you start to feel at home in your own life again. Living in alignment also requires patience and honesty with yourself. You won't rebuild your lost self overnight. There will be times you slip back into old patterns, times you question whether you're being selfish for choosing your needs, and times when the world around you doesn't understand the changes you're making. But each moment of authenticity, no matter how small, is a step toward reclaiming your wholeness. The most liberating truth is that reconnecting with yourself is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you already were before the world told you to be someone else. It's peeling back the layers of conditioning, survival strategies, and roles you've outgrown. It's giving yourself permission to be the person you secretly long to be all along. And while that path may feel uncertain, it is the only one that leads to genuine peace. When you choose authenticity over approval, alignment over performance, and truth over fear, you finally come back home to yourself.